5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, good evening. It's Sunday night. It's time to talk hockey. I am Jeff Colson, and I'm so excited to be talking to you tonight. And I want to get into so many different things. Actually, I don't want to get into a lot of things. I want to get into one particular topic, but we're going to be driven a lot by you because that's the way this works. This is Ask Me Anything. It is a stream for people that are looking for questions about the process, the advancement process, and how things work. Once again, I'm so excited to get rolling, so let's get into this. I am happy to be here tonight. I'm happy to be talking to you. I thank you for tuning in. Even if you're watching this on the replay, it's exciting to have an audience as loyal as we have. We have everything tonight. As usual, we got from Flint to Taiwan. How could you have a better audience than that? So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the Junior Hockey Advisor family and listening to some of the nonsense that I say and how things are going. But hey, Riverside's back. Riverside, we missed you 1 or 2 weeks. I can't remember, Riverside, but good to see you back. It's good to see Greg coming in from just south of Sarnia in Ontario. So, I think it's Windsor. I'm sorry. I think he's over in the Windsor area because you told me before, and if I got that wrong, I'm sorry. Peter in Chicago, good to see you. Dan coming in from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which is almost as good as Sheboygan, Michigan, but not quite there, but still good to see you, Dan. Hey, one of the things that got me excited this week was right before I went on the air, I'm checking the Facebook page, which is blowing up. If you guys haven't noticed, we add anywhere from 75 to 100 to 125 new members every week. And it is by far, I track the matrix, the matrix and the social media site against the other sites that do junior related content on Facebook. And we've been blowing the doors off of everybody for the last 6 months since we started this process. And it's exciting to see it grow. It's exciting to see the conversations that get going. It's exciting to see people interact and become friends and become, not only tied together with social media, but actually build connections for hockey and for other things in life besides just hockey. So it's really cool. Sorry. Louise says, sorry. Riverside says, sorry. Had a tournament in Minnesota last week. So good to see you there. So what do we want to do this week? What I want to do is I want to go back and I want to backtrack a little bit because, our audience and who we've got. Of course, we've got our regulars. We've got Jeannie and Flint. We've got Lewis. We've got, like I said, we've got a few others like Mary Jo's on, Greg's on, Joey's on. All these people are regulars. I get it. But remember, we've got now thousands of people that watch this on replay, and a lot of the people that are watching this are new. So we've got to go back a little bit. And I want to talk about where you play matters. And that's going to be my theme. I'll go through this a little bit. I'm actually going to walk through one of my old, it's only a few months old, but it was from last season. It seems like 10 years ago already when we talk about last season's information. By the way, isn't it nice to see some of the junior hockey up and running right now? Isn't it nice to see scores coming in? Isn't it nice to see games being played? I know it's not perfect yet. I know not everybody's happy, but I was going to tell you, I was looking at Facebook, and let me get back to this first. I got a couple things I got to tell you. One is looking at Facebook right before I got on, and there was a question that came up last week about a situation. I don't want to go into the details, but basically some advice that I gave. The mom sat down with her son and went through the advice, and went through the details of the things we were talking on here. And just some success, it worked. Some things actually went positive. And some of the things that we're talking about here are actually being directly applied. And I would ask, if you're getting some success with some of the things we're talking about here, share them with us. Go on the discussion page and talk about them. Maybe go over onto our Facebook page, the real page, not the discussion page, but the actual page. And there's a section there for reviews. put it down so somebody else can see it. Put it down as a testimonial on that page. Right on the top, there's a review place. You can put that in. And what that would do for us is let other people see that good things are happening and you get good information here, and it's actually helping you in your process. So the other thing, I got to tell you, if some of you are friends with me on my Facebook page, and my Facebook page is pretty transparent. It's 99% hockey people. I got my few hundred regular Facebook friends, but the other 4,700 are hockey related people. And I bring this up because I started a firestorm yesterday. I went down to visit my mom for her birthday, her 75th birthday. And I don't, not on my Facebook page, not here. I don't get into politics. I've got my opinions, but they're my opinions. I really don't want this ever to turn into something that becomes so violently opposed that people, but I got to share this with you. I flew down, followed all the procedures. I went to, I flew Delta, so Delta sends me a questionnaire. I fill it out. I did everything right. My mask, socially distancing, the airplane. They kept the middle rows open. So many things were done right. The airports were extremely good at social distancing and mask. I get down there, the hotel was very good. The rental car company was very good. So everything down and back, was done properly. It was all done with the rules in place. I get back, and on the way back, I had to fill out a questionnaire for the state of New York. And then when I got off the plane, we were literally met by military personnel. There must have been 8 or 10 military personnel, and I could be exaggerating because it seemed like there was a whole platoon there. There were county workers, there were state workers, and literally they built a wall around us coming off the plane to make sure that everybody was checked first. Since then, they've literally called my house and texted me twice to make sure I'm in my house and that I'm self-quarantining for 14 days because I went out of the state of New York. Now, I can go anywhere in the state of New York in my car, drive, train. I can go to the hot spots. I can go to New York City where, this blew up. That was one of the epicenters of this whole pandemic thing. But I go down to Naples, Florida, and I come back and I'm put in prison in my own house for 14 days. I'm not trying to turn this into a political, presidential statement. I'm saying as an individual that just went to visit his mom, do I really need to spend 14 days in my own house when I went to Naples, Florida and back? It just doesn't seem to be the amount of money that's being spent to track people and to find out where they're at and what they're doing. They spent 10 to 12 minutes on the phone with me asking me who I worked for, what my doctor's name was, all my background history of my health. And I'm thinking, why? I'm either sick or I'm not sick. I've checked my temperature. I took a COVID test, a few weeks before I left. I know I'm ranting on this, but Naples, Florida and back on an airplane. So now I got to stay in this room here away from my wife. I did apply for conjugal visit through the state. I don't know if it'll come through or not, but I don't know if I'll share that with you if it does happen. But there are some things. I started digging a tunnel too. I'm going to try to get out and get some fast food through the tunnel that I'm digging. Stalag 36. That's where I'm at right now. Stalag 36. So anyway, I'm done. That's it. So let's get rolling with the topic tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about, until your questions start coming in, get them in quicker. The quicker you get them in, the quicker I can get to your topics too. But I want to cover mine, which is where you play matters. Now, I don't want you to go to YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look at this video, there's an extremely fat guy that does the video. And I really don't like the look because, man, oh man, was I pounding on some pounds in there, putting on some pounds at that video. So yeah, don't look at that video. Don't look at that video. Don't go to YouTube and look at the where you play matters video or the polls don't matter video. I'll cover it here and then I'll redo that video so that we can have at least a little bit thinner person doing that. Dan says the reason to leave New York. Hey, look, as soon as I can leave New York, I can't wait to leave New York. We're in the midst of other things right now, but I agree with you. New York is not my home state. Michigan is. We've already lived in Florida as a family, and when I was in the Marine Corps, I lived in California and Arizona a little bit, in Memphis, and I like a lot of different places. So you're absolutely right, Dan. I fully agree with you on that one. So, okay, so let's get into this. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to go through this, and it's a little bit of a presentation. Stick with me on this. I'll do it a lot quicker than I would normally, but if you have questions along the way, throw the questions up. If you have comments along the way, throw your comments up, and I'll try to make this a little bit more entertaining and a lot thinner than the other video that's up on YouTube. So, junior rankings, rankings for junior hockey, are they worthless? Well, I contend that the rankings you see that are put out by the CJHL, the rankings that you see put out by any social media junior outlet are worthless. And we're going to talk about why, but it's also going to backdoor in to the real reason and what's really important. The only real way that you can get a litmus test and weight teams is by their D1 commits. So you really can't put a ranking out right now. You really can't get a ranking. And if you as the season goes on, in a normal year, you've got some big showcases at the beginning of the year. And the North American Hockey League has the biggest in Blaine to start the year off. And when I say the biggest, it's because they have 26 teams in that league now, and they bring in some of their NAPHL teams and other rinks, and it's a big deal. And you see a lot of commitments come into play there. Right off the beginning of the year, you'll see boom, boom, boom. A few weeks right after that showcase, you get a lot of commitments from D1 schools. Well, that showcase isn't happening this year, so you're going to see less. But that's your baseline for the level of play you're at. If I'm playing U16 or U18, if I'm on a U16 team that by mid-season has 4 or 5 commits on the team, you're probably in the right place because that team's getting looked at. That team's getting noticed. That team has the eye of Division I hockey. If you don't have commitments, it doesn't mean that you're not at the same level. It just means that maybe you don't have the same eye that other teams have. Usually, and I'll go through the numbers with you, you'll see that at least in the junior world, it is almost 100% correct. Where your D1 talent is, that's where your top talent is in your top leagues. Can anybody argue that the USHL is not the best league? The USHL is by far the best league for talent headed towards NCAA Division I. Look at the commitments. Look at the amount of commitments on the roster for any USHL team. Hands down, the most of any league. Okay, small percentage of the players, a very small percentage of the players in the USHL move on to play Division III. A small percentage will go straight to the pros from there, but the majority of them go to NCAA Division I. So let's go through this. Current polls are disproportionate to the NCAA Division I commits. And remember, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about last year, the 2019. Utilizing NCAA Division I talent to rank teams works. So, all right, so this is a poll I pulled, and this is late in the year last year. And this is just showing you how one of the social media polls built out the season. They had a couple. Now remember, nobody ranks the USHL. The CCHL ranks all the junior A programs in Canada, all 10 leagues in the same poll. And there's 2 other sources of power rankings or polls that come out from social media sites that are related to junior hockey. This is one of them. Now, you notice right off the bat they've got some NAHL teams, but then they get into some NCDC teams, and then when you get down to where the red lines are, that's where things get sketchy. Okay, where the red lines are, you got an SJHL team, which is the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, great league, and Battleford had an awesome year last year. I don't want to discount the quality of that league or discount the quality of that team. But remember, we're looking at the top 20 teams in North America, and we're looking to see who they really are. Pal Islanders from the NCDC, I'm talking about the red arrows right now. Toronto Patriots in the OJHL, Connecticut Junior Rangers in the NCDC, Ogden from the WSHL, and then you get down to the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League in the SJHL. So you're looking at teams here that not only don't have a D1 commitment on their roster and won't have, but you're talking about some leagues that don't have Division I commitments in their whole league. Okay, so back this up and look at that list. Okay, then I want you to look at a couple of things. Look at number 12 there on the green arrow, which is Coquitlam, and they're at 12, and then you got Pintaken down at the V's down at the 17th rank. So the BCHL, take away the USHL, the BCHL is comparable to the North American Hockey League. In fact, it's condensed. It's got less teams. It has just a ton. I would use a little an explicative there, a blank ton of talent. And to say that there's only 2 teams in the BCHL in the top 20, hang on. We're going to fix that, and we're going to walk through this so you can see how this works. So, once again, college commitments matter, especially Division I college commitments. So college commitments, if we look at last year when I took a snapshot, and remember this is just a snapshot of the time where I put this presentation together, the BCHL had 155. Now the North American League came in late and actually surpassed that. But look at the top 3 leagues: BCHL, North American Hockey League, AJHL, OJHL. Okay, in those leagues right there, you have nearly 400 NCAA Division I commitment players. Look at the bottom 4 leagues where you have 3 NCAA Division I commitments. Okay, in the middle you've got the NCDC and the CCHL and the MJ. But you take the BCHL and the NAHL away, percentage-wise, there's virtually no Division I commitments going on if you take those weighted proportions away. So if you look at this, you can break that group into 3 different categories. The BCHL and the NAHL are those are your heavyweights. That's your Muhammad Ali's, that's your Mike Tyson's of the NCAA Division I's. Then you get into your middleweights, which is your AJ, OJ, NCDC, and CCHL. Nothing wrong with those leagues, but, and I'll show you this in a little bit, certain teams carry a lot of weight in those leagues, and it brings their numbers up. And it's just something you got to be prepared to understand when you're looking at these leagues in general. Then you've got what, arguably in the world of D1 hockey, your lightweights, which is your MJ, your SJ, your NOJ, your SIJHL, and your WSHL. Don't forget that these leagues all have a purpose. Just because the MJ and the SJ and the NOJO and the SIJHL aren't chock full of NCAA Division I talent doesn't mean there's not a purpose there, because these leagues either are pass-through leagues, which they have younger players that do move on to the BCHL or the AJ or the North American Hockey League, which is very true. The MJ and the SJ this year both had a lot of players that moved on to the North American Hockey League, and this year, throw it all out the window, because I just read an article about how there's players from the BCHL that are still playing in the SJHL to get games in because the BCHL season has been delayed. So, there's a lot of things this year that'll be different. So if you look at those green boxes I threw up there, I threw up the weighted percentage of where your talent's coming from. 2 leagues, the heavyweights, the BCHL and the NAHL, 67% of your NCAA Division I talent. Now, set aside the USHL, the rest, that's where your talent is coming from. Then you've got 31% coming from your middleweights, and then 2% that are coming from the lightweights, okay? So if you did a ranking, a top 20 ranking, your team representation would look like that light green box there, which would be 14 teams would have to come from the BCHL and the NAHL, or 6 teams from everybody else. So your weighting system would be 14 teams and 6. Now, that's not the way these polls work, because part of these polls are, the CCHL poll, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, which is all your Junior A leagues, that's their league. Their poll is politically correct. Their poll has a couple teams from the BCHL, a couple from the SIJHL, a couple from the NOJO. But it's deceptive, because people that read that don't know it's a politically correct poll, and they don't know that that's why they're doing it. They're going to always have a couple. Can you imagine if the polls for NCAA football, Division I football, said, well, we always got to have a team from the Atlantic, and we always got to have a team from the Big Ten, and we always have to have a 10 from the Pac. And the SEC sitting down there with 8 teams that need to be ranked, but everybody's got to have some, so the SEC only gets 2. Nobody would buy that. Nobody would buy into that, but that's what happens here. Then the other polls, not the CJHL poll, the other polls, you have to look at who actually sponsors them. Look at their website and see what teams and what leagues sponsor them, and you'll see why the weightings are the way they are. That's not my business, that's their business, but I'm here to tell you, when you look at these polls, don't take them for face value. You got to be able to read beyond the numbers here. So, once again, that 14-6 ranking, the actual rankings should be just by, the weighted player side of things, should be 8 from the BCHL NAHL, 8 from the AJHL, OJHL, NCDC, and CCHL, and 4 from the other leagues. That's if you just did it on the weighting side. But there's more to it than that. There's more. So now let's look at the average commits per team. Let's actually look at what these teams have as far as commitments. Now, we just talked about the overall leagues and why it's important to weight the leagues, but let's break this down into teams now. The BCHL, 9 point at the time. Remember, this is a snapshot. There was many more commitments, and especially in the North American Hockey League, that came out of this afterwards. So the BCHL had 9.1 commitments. The NAHL had 6.2. But go down the list a little bit, okay? It drops drastically to almost half when you get to the AJ. And when you get to the NCDC and the CCHL, the numbers even get lower. By the time you get to the bottom of the list, you're getting extremely, just low numbers. So you have to look at this and understand how that works when it comes to this. So once again, if we look at the red, if we were looking for just doing the weighting, average commits per team, and you weighted this out, now remember, I'll save this and I'll come back to this if we need to. I want to get to a couple of them. Why the commits matter. Okay, this is important because what I did here on this one is the yellow is the actual rankings from the poll. So remember I said the BCHL only had 2 teams? They were ranked 12th and 17th. That's the kind of yellowish in the middle there. Now, if you look at the D1 commit numbers, first of all, this is your whole BCHL. The red are your first in place teams by each division. Okay, so there's your top teams in the red for the BCHL. Now slide all the way over to the right and look at their D1 commitments, and you'll see that it works like clockwork. The top teams in each division have all the commitments across the board, your top numbers of commitments. Now there's a couple. Green is, I forget when I put this together, if green was 10 or more, 9 or more, or 10 or more, but light blue is less than green, and then the gray on the bottom is like less than 3 or 4, I believe the number was. So you can see on there that, yes, there's a couple other where Powell and Victoria, they also have some high numbers, but it doesn't matter. The highest numbers of D1 commitments are all on your top teams. That's in the BCHL. Not convinced yet? Let's go to the North American Hockey League from last season. This is last season. Remember, it's a snapshot. So I can tell you Lone Star had more commitments after this. Amarillo had numerous more commitments after this. I think they had probably 4 or 5 after this. I don't know Fairbanks numbers. I know they had more commitments. New Jersey had more. Johnstown had more. And Bismarck did not, I don't believe, and I'm not sure about Chippewa. But once again, your red are your top teams in each division. Okay, Lone Star and Amarillo were sitting on top. Fairbanks and Aberdeen were sitting on top. New Jersey, Johnstown, Bismarck, and Chippewa. Okay, so look at the rankings. They got Lone Star was the top ranked team in that poll. Amarillo was the second, and so they got 2, 4, 6 out of their 8 teams are committed. But look at Bismarck. They've got 12 D1 commitments sitting on that roster, and you're telling me that a team in the WSHL with no commitments should be in a poll above Bismarck? Come on. Come on. It just doesn't work. But you can see, look where all your top commitments are. Now, remember, this was a snapshot. So you can look down and you can say, well, Corpus has 8, and they were one of the bottom teams. Corpus added a lot of players at the end of the year that came from the NCDC, came from other spots that added to that number, made that number high. There were kids like There was one kid that came from the NCDC program in Rochester, New York. It already had a commitment to RPI, a couple other kids. So that's a little bit skewed. Jamestown is probably the only anomaly that I can see on this, but still, if you look it up towards the top, where they ended up, all those top teams filled up much, much further than what Jamestown did as far as commitments. But once again, you can see your top teams in the league, where are all your commitments at? Still not convinced? Let's look at the NCDC. NCDC, 2 teams are on top. They don't have divisions. They have them all listed. Okay, your Hitmen and your Bruins. Okay, there's your rankings. Now, this is where it gets bizarre because they put Connecticut and PAL into that rankings. Connecticut and PAL had no Division I commitments, and they were ranked 10th and 15th. They were ranked ahead of the BCHL teams. However, you look at the right there, where are all your commitments at? All of your commitments, I'll get to the Janesville side. Well, Dan, I'll tell you, if I can go back. Yeah. Janesville, where is Janesville on here? Did I leave Janesville off? Maybe I did leave Janesville off. Sorry. I don't believe Janesville had a significant number. They might have been a light blue number. Dan, I can grab that information for you. If I left Janesville off, it wasn't on purpose, and it was just because Jamestown and Johnstown and Janesville, sometimes they get confusing, and I just blow it. So, hey, yeah, I'm glad you caught that. I'll fix this, and before I put the actual video out for this year, I'll make sure that Janesville is in the new video that I do on this. So getting back to this, getting back to the Hitmen and the NCDC and the Bruins, top 2 teams by far. They're good teams. These teams are stacked with talent. They got 12 and 9 commitments respectively. But to say that they're as good or better than others, how can it be? It can't be. They have to fit into to where they're at. If the Bruins have 9, can they really be better than a team that has 12, 13, or 14? Maybe that's subjective. But now you get down to Connecticut and PAL with none. How do they even get put in the rankings if they've got 0 D1 commitments on their roster? Once again, that's where the subjectivity of these polls come into play. And that's why it's a little bit odd that they work this way. Not convinced yet that this is the way it works? Okay, here's your top teams from the AJHL. Sherwood, Okotoks, Brooks, and Spruce Grove. Only 2 of the 4 made the rankings. Only 2 of the 4, which is interesting because your best team last year, you could argue that Okotoks and Spruce Grove were as good or better than anybody else. But, only 2 of them. Okotoks was incredibly good last year. 10 D1 commitments on it. They don't make the list. The second place team, which was Brooks, I believe, in their division, made the list, and they didn't, which doesn't make sense to me at all. But once again, look at the league overall. Look at the top 4 teams. Look at where the D1 commitments are, and then look at that poll and tell me the poll makes sense to you. Okay. So this is something you really have to look at when you're going through these, is look at the actual teams, look at commitments. If I can't convince you that commitments are actually where the top teams are, I don't know what else to say to you. So just to keep going a little bit, the CCHL top team last year, Carleton Place, they made the rankings for commitments, but remember there were 0 commitments teams in that, the WSHL, the SIJHL, and you've got teams here like Rockland, great year last year, 4 commitments. Well, shouldn't they be in the top 20? Maybe they should be sneaking into the bottom of that poll. Okay, now this one's a little bit complex. Don't worry about it. This is your 4 divisions from the North American Hockey League, okay? This is across the board, and this is where I did not leave the Janesville Jets off on this one. So what I want to point out here is this is just looking at the North American Hockey League. The red arrows point out the top amount of commitments in each division. They're in first place. The green arrows are your second place teams as far as commitments. Then the blue shows just some highlighted teams that have some great commitment numbers. But once again, in every division, your top talented teams are in first place. Or I should reverse that statement. Your first place team has all the top talent, okay? And it's perpetual. There's momentum. If you have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 commitments at the beginning of the year, there's more of a chance, and the statistics are your team will pull more attractive Division I attention to you because you've already got commitments. A coach can come out and say, well, I know what they can triangulate. They can look at the 3 or 4 kids that are on the ice with you and say, hey, that kid keeps up, or he's just as good or better than the kids that are already committed. So it makes it much easier. That's why a coach wants to go see the first place from one division play the first place for the other division. They want to go to the playoff games. They want to go to the all-star games because then they're seeing apples to apples and they're not watching. For example, last year we all know Odessa was horrid. There's no other way to put it. They had one Division I commitment on the team last year, but they were horrid. Nobody wants to see Odessa play Lone Star or play Amarillo because you really can't compare apples to apples. It's not a good comparison. So anyway, just let's keep moving through this a little bit. BCHL, same thing. I just wanted to show you by division. Green shows you how many commits the first place team has. Red shows you how many commitments the second place team has. And then blue shows you everything else. Tons of talent in the BCHL because remember, it's condensed. It's a smaller league. There's 17 teams listed here compared to the North American Hockey League that has 9-10 teams more than they do. So the North American Hockey League is a little bit more watered out. At least last year they were. This year it won't be that case because they dropped 3 teams. All that talent's coming back in because the USHL dropped 2. BCHL's got a late start. BCHL only has half the Americans playing up there that they've had before. So you're seeing a lot more talent in the North American Hockey League. I've told you that before. The winner in the pandemic for hockey players is the North American Hockey League. I saw something online, some respected hockey player or hockey person in the hockey world made the comment on Twitter the other day. He said, there's a logjam because of the condensed talent, because of the condensed amount of teams. There's a logjam of talent. It doesn't work that way. The amount of talent, we actually added a Division I school, okay? The amount of talent stayed the same. It's just condensed into an easier and more convenient package, for Division I coaches to watch because they're all, playing in the NAHL and the USHL right now versus being in the BCHL too. Now I'm talking about the American players and not all of them, but theoretically a lot more are there. But the thing that is going to play out a little bit, I know I'm digressing and getting off track a little bit here, is going to be the NCAA's ability to let players keep a year of eligibility and what effect that has. Now, I would argue that's probably not going to have as much of an effect as you think it is because if you got, top talent it might make a difference with, or somebody that's on the verge of breaking out, it might make some difference with. But if I'm a player that's a second, third, fourth line player that's just kind of gone through my career, even a Division I player with no, real aspirations to play pro or no ability or it's not looking like I can move towards the pro ranks, why would I want to stick around another year? It probably is not going to be as big and as significant a number as it's been talked about right now. So I'm almost done with this, and I'll get to some of our comments that are coming in. I see a couple of things coming in. So here's a revised look at that poll. And this is just taking strictly by numbers of commitments on how that poll could actually look. Now, I put the actual rankings over there of where they're, the new ranking, and then I put the Division I commitments. And you can kind of see a little bit. I apologize. This is not that. This is the poll. This is the original poll. My poll's coming up in a second. With the rankings, what league they're in, what the teams were, and the actual D1 commitments. So once again, 8th place and 10th place have 0 commitments, but the 12th place and 14th place teams have 11 and 12, or the 11th and 12th place teams have 12 and 14 commitments. The 13th place team, which is the Toronto Patriots, has 0 commitments at that time, but you've got Pennington down in 17th place with 15 commitments. It's insanity. It's insanity. I hope when you look at these polls from now on, you look and you can see that there's just it just doesn't make any sense when by their way of going about things. So okay, this is a little complex, but what I did was I said, look, taking all those first place teams that we looked at all the different leagues, and those are the teams in red. Okay, here's how many teams that should be considered for the rankings. Okay, and this is using that 14-6 principle. Now you could put all the BCHL teams, most of the top teams in the North American Hockey League in there, and you'd have some room for some AJ teams. You'd have some rooms for some NCDC teams. But once again, just throwing that out there so you can see it. This are the teams that were left out of that poll that, once again, doesn't make any sense. You got the Smoke Eaters with 11 commitments. You just look at this list of the BCHL. You got 7 BCHL teams. 7 BCHL teams with all double-digit commitments. Chilliwack, 16 commitments on their roster last year, and 2 of them are NHL draft picks. Okay, not in the poll, left off the poll. How the hell do you consider yourself a poll when you've got a Division I chocked full of roster and you leave this team off the poll? It makes no sense. It's because they're not using any logic and they're playing favorites. Oh, they remember names. They remember, oh yeah, that team in the BCHL is usually good, or Amarillo is always good in the North American Hockey League. Don't get me wrong. Both those teams were good, and Amarillo was extremely good last year. But my point is, there's nothing. You got kids left off, or teams left off with 1 central scouting and 2 draft picks on the roster, and they're not making a junior poll, top 20 poll. Come on. So anyway, that's it. I kind of went through that fast. I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense. D1 commitments matter. Where you play matters. So if you're playing in the leagues, and when I say the leagues, CJHL, if you got an offer between 2 CJHL teams and you consider yourself, you've triangulated, you've used our theories that we talk about here. You've built a team around you to triangulate, to give you a good assessment of where you'll be. If you're on track to be an NCAA Division I player, you can now see there's certain leagues you should be playing in. Okay, it's very clear. There's nothing saying you can't play in the CCHL. There's nothing saying you can't play in the NCDC. But if you're uncommitted and you're playing in the NCDC, you sure as hell don't want to be playing on one of the bottom teams in the league, because you want to play on a team that has college coaches watching. You could say, well, the New Jersey Hitmen had a bunch of commitments on them already. Why would the college coaches watch them? That's not the way it works. The way it works is they come watch them because they want to see how other people compete against them. Not the last place team, though. They want to see the second place team and the third place team that have competitive players on them. And they also want to see how their own players are doing that are on that roster. They might come and watch. If I'm an RPI coach and I've got 2 RPI kids, or if I'm an Army coach and I've got 2 guys from Army on New Jersey Hitmen, I want to come out and see how they're doing, how they're comparing against other guys. Because if I've already committed to them and I see a kid that's doing as well or better than the guys I've already got and he's uncommitted, that's how I'm going to actually elevate my roster. That's how I'm going to work things. So don't be worried about a team having too much Division I talent. I don't believe that's possible. If you're the only guy on the roster and you've got every other guy on the roster is committed and you're not, you're in a great spot, because your coach can just promote you. He's got no other thing to do but promote you, because all those other guys are taken care of. There's no better situation to be in than a team that's chock full, just flat out chock full of Division I talent. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Okay. Anyway, that covers that. Let's get into some of the things you've got to say. Give me your comments on this. Tell me what you think. I want to know if that was even worth discussing. I enjoyed it because I love talking about this some. So let's get into some things here. Let's see what Peter's got to say. My son is in 8th grade, currently a 2000 Bantam minor in the Central States League in Illinois. Is he better off playing your high school, for high school, or to stay in the club hockey route to advance to juniors? Where do you get more looks? Okay, that is so easy across the board. Reverse engineer from juniors. Look at your junior rosters across the board. I would also say that there's some great minds in that Central Illinois area, especially in that Central States League. I'm sorry, the Central States, not Central Illinois. I would reach out and talk to some people in the know, some of the coaches. Make that triangle around you. Build with the people that you can trust around you. I would say you need to be on a team that produces talent that moves to the next level. Now, that talent could be to move to some great Tier 3 junior programs, or it could be moving to the North American Hockey League or the USHL. But that rarely happens in high school hockey outside of Minnesota. A little bit in Wisconsin. There's that pocket of great programs in Wisconsin that do it. There's a great pocket in Detroit, and there's a great pocket of high school teams in the Boston area. Outside of that, the majority of your high school programs do not. In New York, forget it. Yes, you'll get players that are playing on a superstar team out of Syracuse or Buffalo, or they're playing. They're on these U16 rosters, split season, that are just phenomenal teams out of Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, and they'll play their high school season. There's a kid playing in the Boston D1 right now named Dave Ferrance, came out of the National Development Program. He was on a fast track with his team out of Syracuse, a great hockey player at U16. He still played high school, but it wasn't because the high school there was for development. He played it because he wanted to be around his friends and have fun. That high school experience did nothing for him because all of his development was coming from the summers with his showcase teams, with his U16 team at the beginning of the year. That's where all of his exposure came from. That's where all of his conversations and his talks came from. It's not uncommon. Here's another litmus test. If your high school program has a state championship and you only have ACHA college club coaches coming to the state championship, that should tell you something. You can go to the New York State Championship games. You can go to the state championships that used to be held in Utica every single year. I'm not sure where they're doing it this year or last year. But you go and watch the state championships, you might get a D3 school in there. You might get one or two in there. Rarely will you see a D1 coach walk in. He might walk in to watch one game with a specific player because that player was doing what Davey France did, that's playing in Boston right now. They're just not coming to the games. So if you're not getting, like, you go to Minnesota, everybody's there. You got from the NAHL on down, when you get to the state championship level, they're playing in front of 10, 12,000 people. But that doesn't happen in many states. In Detroit, Detroit has a pocket of 4 or 5 schools that are powerhouse schools that kick talent into the USHL, into the BCHL, into the North American Hockey League. Outside of that, it's all coming from the Tier 1 Elite, the HPHL, and it's coming from youth hockey. So my answer would be, if your Tier 1 Elite is too far away, I'm not sure exactly what city you're coming from. If your HPHL teams are too far away, then you got to look at other options that are going to get you, as you reverse engineer back to the junior ranks. So hopefully that helped. I kind of went back a little ass backwards on how I answered that, but I hope that helps, Peter. Let me know if that helps. Dan, no problem. Richard, awesome to break down and show the teams and their commitments. I was noticing by looking up the history of players lately on elite prospects that players often come from the same few teams. Absolutely. If you're tried and true, one of the best kept secrets in the Tier 1 Elite League, it's not a best kept secret for anybody that's in the D1 ranks or in the college and junior ranks, USHL and North American Hockey League. The Tier 1 Elite, I mean, holy smokes, Victory Honda kicks out, talent left and right all the time. If you go into the North American Hockey League and you look at the rosters, just count up the Tier 1 Elite players. Look at the Fox, the Myers, the Little Caesars. They're not Tier 1 Elite anymore, but the Detroit area U16, U18 teams. And don't forget, just because kids come out of the Detroit market from 16 and 18s, it doesn't mean they're from Detroit. It means they played in Detroit because they gravitated towards where the teams are chock full of talent, because those teams get exposure. Okay, Minnesota players don't do that because they stay in their high school programs. That they're strong, they can do that. But the rest of the world, if you're not in Boston and you're not in the Detroit markets, a little bit in Chicago because there's 4 teams, HPHL Tier 1 Elite teams there. But the other Tier 1 Elite teams, they even lose players. If you're out of the Ohio area and you're on a Tier 1 Elite team, they lose players that move up into the Detroit markets because they're more exposed. They're highly exposed. So yes, you're going to see them all coming from the same teams. That's the way it works. I mean, I'm not advocating for anything here. I'm just telling you how the system works. If I'm a great player and I'm in Iowa, maybe Iowa's got some programs. Maybe that's a bad example. If I'm in Kansas, if I'm in New Mexico, I need to gravitate first to the best tier 1 situation I can get first. And then I need to try to gravitate towards the best program possible at that level. And the sacrifice across the board that most people forget is you're going to have to leave home if you're not in a traditional market. It's the way it is. It's either going to happen at juniors, it's going to happen at prep, it's going to happen at 16 or 18. You're going to have to leave home if you're looking to play Division I college hockey. You can say, oh, that's not right. You can say, oh, that's not fair. You can say, oh, why would you want to have your little Johnny leave at 15 or 16 years old? It's the way of the world if you want to play this game and you want to play at the high level. It's rare that you can stay at home. It's either because you live in a great market or you just happen to have the stars align with you on your team and your market. So, hey, I owned 2 junior teams. I had one of the best U16 and U18 programs in Western New York, at my disposal. My son played in Detroit because I could not actually get him to the level he needed to be at in our program and where we were at. He needed to go to a bigger market. He needed to play on teams that he could be competitive with, and that's how it works. So, I hope that it's a good point, Richard. I'm glad to see that. Anything coming in besides that? Okay, here's one. Why do you believe more schools don't recruit from the Maritime Junior Hockey League? Okay, James, that's a great question. The Maritime is remote, not only remote in Canada, but it's also remote for access for the majority of teams in the United States. Having to go up through Maine, having to go up through New Hampshire and Maine to get to a program, you see that the other leagues, where do most of the players come from? They come from the seas. I'm talking about inside of the Canadian markets that are, coaches from the D1 ranks going and getting players. CCHL and the OJHL Toronto market, easy to get to from all of your D1 schools in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. New York and Michigan, you're talking about a ton of D1 schools that have easy access. Look in the New York market. You've got West Point, you've got Union, you've got RPI, you've got Clarkson, you've got St. Lawrence, you've got RIT, you've got Niagara, you've got who else am I missing? I'm missing at least 2 or 3 more. You're talking about Cornell, Colgate. So you're talking about just a ton of schools in New York. For New York teams to get up to the Maritimes, to PEI, any of those areas over there, you're talking about a rare occurrence that you see a direct flight go there, but they all can get up to Toronto fairly easily. Within a few hours, even the downstate teams can get up to the Toronto market pretty easy. Okay, they can access Boston real easy. They all can access Detroit very easy. So Detroit, Toronto, Boston, New York, with all their D1 schools, have access to all those programs. So really, it's a necessity too. Why would you go up there to see a minimal amount of players when you can see a ton of players at the 16, 18, and junior levels when you're in the Toronto market or you're in the Detroit market? So most of it's proximity. When you're looking at the AJHL, proximity. You can fly into one place. There's a big showcase for the AJHL right outside of Edmonton. It's usually held at, don't ask me right now which team holds it, but they've got a great rink. You're 30 minutes south of Edmonton, and you got a great showcase there. BCHL, easy to fly into. It's easier to get to the BCHL games to watch players than it is to get up to the Maritimes or PEI or any of those areas over there to watch games. It comes down to just a logical, the numbers game. Do I go watch talent where there might be, a sparse amount of talent in a whole league, or do I go to a league where the difference between the top player and the second top player is fractional, and I know that I'm getting quality because there's established teams that have put out Division I talent for years and years and years across the board. So hopefully that helps. That's a great question, Canisius. Thank you. I knew I was missing one. So, okay, let's get on to another question and see if we got anything else going on here. How important are stats on websites? Do college coaches look at them? My 03 goalie is a junior in high school, but playing for the Philadelphia Little Flyers. Goalie stats I feel are important. What are your thoughts? Said it before on the show. Goalies, it's their own breed when it comes to being recruited, because a lot of head coaches recruit on impulse when it comes to goalies. In other words, if you're playing in a great league and you're a goalie and you're consistent, stats do matter. Don't get me wrong. The stats are absolutely important. Coaches do look at stats, and especially because programs usually have a specialist for goalies. They'll have a goalie coach. They'll have an outside person maybe that works with their goalies, but they have influence in the decision from goalie coaches. And if you're a goalie and you're a goalie coach, you absolutely look at numbers, because that's part of being a goalie. They get into statistical analysis and they love that stuff. So yes, stats are important. However, as I've said before, goalies can make one great save in a showcase and impress 10 Division I coaches to the point where they got put on the radar, or they can have a flurry where they make a great save and then they can turn around after the great save and make a great backup save and control the rebound in a flurry that changes the game and be put on the radar. Right? I've seen it happen with goalies where one view and they've got the attention of a Division I coach or a top junior program. So it's twofold. You've got to keep the stats good, but you've also got to be consistent. And when you got your chance, you've got to perform. When there's people in the stands, you got to perform. And of course, that's across the board. But defensemen are afforded a lot of times. It's 4, 5, 6 looks. I've rarely seen a Division I college coach see a great play by a defenseman and go, I got to go down to the locker room and talk to him right now. We need him. And I've literally seen that happen a half a dozen times with Division I coaches with goalies. So now they're still coming out of good leagues. They're still already proven, but it does happen with goalies a little bit different. So great question. Hopefully that answers a little bit of that. Follow-up. Mike's got a follow-up. How do you get a shot at a top team in a market like Mass or Detroit or at 14-16 outside of that state? Show up and try out, get noticed at tournaments? Okay, yeah, so that's Mike, you just asked the $1 million question. So I'm not in Boston. I'm not in Detroit. I'm not in one of these top markets, okay? How do I make that team? How do I get my son on that team out of Detroit? Yes, you can show up at tryouts. Yes, you can actually just walk in and try out. They all have open tryouts. A lot of the teams in the Tier 1 Elite and the HBHL, though, open tryouts are there for face value only. They've been working on that roster for the whole year to improve for next year. Where you really make the difference is you got to get yourself involved with top showcase teams. You've got to get yourself involved by emailing that coach ahead of time during the season and just saying, and here's the legal way of doing that. You email the programs and you say, hey, are you involved in any spring programs? Because I'd like my son to play with you in spring programs, because I hear your program's got great spring teams, and I'd love to see you involved, or you assist my son during the spring. Get on the radar with them that way. You can't talk about next year. We don't want to break recruiting rules here, but if that team has a spring team, sure, you can get involved. A lot of teams in Detroit will have kids, 2, 3, 4 kids from other programs at lesser level leagues skating in practices. They all do it legally. They get permission from their league to go skate with that team on their off nights. They usually don't play games. They're not usually doing it, but they're getting a chance to skate and get a chance to play. You'll see in the Detroit market, maybe the Victory Honda team will have 2 kids from a local powerhouse AA team that are skating up with them in practice, or they've got a AAA kid that's coming in from somewhere down in Wisconsin or somewhere in Tennessee that doesn't have the same access to AAA. There are legal ways to do it. You reach out to the team. Don't ask them about next year directly. Ask them if they're involved with showcase teams. If not, get involved with some of the great showcase teams in the Buffalo. Not the Buffalo. In the Boston markets, the Detroit markets. There's some in the Colorado area too. These showcase teams, we've talked about it before. These guys used to be looked down at. 5-10 years ago, showcase coaches, nobody gave them the credit for what they were doing. But now these guys spend all year. These are full-time jobs for many of these guys. They spend all year building these rosters. They build these teams. They get these kids together. And they've got the ear of junior programs. A lot of these guys now are actually junior player development guys. They work for an actual team. They work for the junior leagues. They're involved. So getting involved with these top showcases like, the Boston, the pre-draft that's out of Boston, there's a few of them out of there. I don't want to go through the whole list. In Detroit, there's some ones too. Get involved with those showcases. You get a chance to meet those guys, build relationships with them. It's not too late at 14 to get involved in this game and to make that happen. But that's how you break the ice. And when you see them at the rink, you say, hey, look, if you run into a Honey Baked or a Little Caesars or a Junior Bruins or a New Jersey Avalanche coach in a rink, and maybe you're playing out of the rink, walk up, introduce yourself. Say, I'm interested in seeing what you think. Can you pop over and watch my son? And just say what you think. You don't say, I want to play for you. You just say what you think. And if he's got the time, a lot of coaches will step over because they're always looking to improve their teams. And if you're playing at a high enough level, they'll let you know. And they'll express interest. They'll make sure that they do it to protect themselves legally too. There's a way to do this legally where you're not breaking rules, but you can elevate yourself up to the next level. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But yes, you can just show up to tryouts, but really it's putting the legwork in. Now, advisors come into play here too. Remember, I'm not an advisor. I don't advocate for or against advisors. I'm here to explain the process. Can an advisor do a lot of this for you? The right advisor can do this for you. Now, remember, when you hire an advisor, and that's why it's so important to use the tools that I've given you, that I've got out there for free. I left them open this week for you. If you haven't gone through the 2 pieces that I've given you for free that are on the junior hockey discussion site, you need to lean in on those things, because it talks about how to hire an advisor that is qualified for what you're trying to get. If I'm trying to get on a great U18 team, I don't want an advisor that specializes in prep schools on the East Coast. If I'm trying to get on a great U16 team or U18 team in the Midwest, I don't want a guy that's working out of British Columbia. He probably doesn't have the same context as a guy that's working in that market. I don't want a guy that specializes in D3 if I have a player that has the ability to play D1. Okay, so you don't want to make their career. You want their career to help you. You're not there to actually, elevate that advisor. That advisor is there to elevate you. So you have to hire the right advisor. Use the tools I've given you across the board. I've given you I've given you a webinar and a checklist document. They're on the website. Take advantage of them. I left them open for another week for you. I usually charge money for those, but they're great tools. I strongly recommend you look at those. Okay, it looks like we're running out of questions, and we've filled up another hour. Give me some feedback real quick, though. How did we do tonight? I know I was excited to be here. I know I was having a blast. Was anybody else getting anything out of this? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you found any value in this tonight. I am pretty happy with the way things went, but hey, I'm easily amused. Plus, I'm in prison right now. I'm on day 2 of a 14-day jail sentence. I got nowhere else to go, so I got to stay in here. Might as well talk to you and have some fun with it, huh? So okay, let's see. We got something else coming in here. Do D1 schools go to spring summer tournaments in Ontario? Okay, James, good question. This will be the last question of the night. James asked, do D1 schools go to spring summer tournaments in Ontario? Tournaments don't get as much play in the spring as you think. A lot of these say, oh, these are the top tournaments, especially the Toronto tournaments. There's some absolutely great tournaments for 12, 14, 16-year-old players in the Toronto market. They usually don't get a lot of D1 love. You might get some. Canisius might go up there because they're close proximity. You might get Mercyhurst up there, RIT once in a while. Usually an assistant coach. You might get somebody that's involved with coaching a team up there. But really, it's the showcases where Division I coaches go. And the reason why Boston is so popular, and you get so many Division I programs at these Boston showcases is, first of all, they're good showcases. They've got good talent there. And this is including the NCDC showcase. But these showcases are in the backyard. Boston College, BU, you've got Harvard, Providence, Yale. All these schools are within quick drive. I mean, some of the colleges, the coach can go, hey, I'm going to take off work 15 minutes early. I'm going to go watch a couple games over the showcase, and I'm still home by dinner. Okay, that's how close they are to these in proximity. So you got a lot more on the East Coast. Detroit, not as many in the Detroit market for the showcases as you get in the Boston area. In Colorado, what they do with their showcases out there, and some in the Tennessee area, is they import a lot of coaches. They actually help. This is a trick that was started by a guy named Kelly Kajori that does things with the girls hockey. They actually import the college coaches. They pay for their rooms, they pay for their food, and they import them in. So you get a lot in Colorado and a lot in Tennessee for those events, college coaches coming in. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I got a tunnel to dig tonight yet. I got to work on that. I got a shiv to make. I got to get myself a sharp object just to make sure that in case anything goes down while I'm on this 14-day quarantine, imprisoned in my own house. I got to make sure I can protect myself here and make sure nothing happens. But these are my walls right now. My wife's not even sleeping in the same room with me. She's taking this serious. We got separate bedrooms going. The food gets shoved under the door. I get half a bologna sandwich is coming under the door once a day, twice a day. Pancakes and bologna sandwiches are the only things that'll fit under the door right now. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great night. Junior Hockey Advisor Jeff Colson. Make sure you go in and make sure you put some comments on so people know that this is valuable to you. And we'll see you next week. Take care.